Christmas Eve. A billionaire's mansion sits in darkness, except for one room where a woman stands frozen, staring at something that shouldn't exist. Her hands tremble as she holds a photograph that changes everything she thought she knew about the man who hired her. In 6 hours, police will arrive. In 12 hours, the truth will come out. And in 24 hours, America will know the name Marcus Washington, the tech billionaire who spent 22 years hiding a secret so devastating, so heartbreaking, that when it finally surfaced, it would shake an entire community to its core. This isn't just about wealth and poverty. This is about loss, redemption, and the moment when two broken people discover that sometimes the family you need finds you in the most unexpected ways. What really happened inside that mansion on Christmas Eve? And why did a billionaire risk everything to protect a woman he barely knew? Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This story begins in Atlanta, Georgia, in one of those neighborhoods where old Southern money meets new tech wealth. November 2023, Marcus Washington, 51 years old, founder and CEO of TechBridge Solutions, worth an estimated $3.9 billion, did something he hadn't done in over 2 decades. He posted a job listing for a live-in maid. The salary was remarkable, $32 an hour, full benefits, room and board, and college fund contributions for any children. For someone drowning in circumstances beyond their control, it was a lifeline thrown from heaven. That someone was Shanice Coleman, a 46-year-old single mother who had been living in her sister's basement for 4 months with her 9-year-old daughter, Zuri. Shanice had worked as a nursing assistant for 17 years before the hospital, where she worked, closed down unexpectedly. Her savings evaporated paying for her mother's funeral. Her car was repossessed. Her apartment, gone. She had sent out 273 job applications in 6 months. This was response number 4. The interview took place on a gray November morning in Marcus's study, a room filled with awards and accolades, but no personal photographs. Marcus looked tired, like a man who hadn't slept properly in years. His questions were simple. Could she start immediately? Did she have family who would need to visit regularly? Was she comfortable with silence? Shanice answered yes, no, and yes, in that order. She didn't mention Zuri, who was at school. Single mothers with children rarely got hired for live-in positions. She'd learned that painful lesson before. Marcus hired her on the spot, barely looking at her resume. It was as if he wasn't really hiring a maid. He was hiring a presence, someone to fill the emptiness that seemed to pour out of every corner of his mansion. The Washington estate was breathtaking and haunting in equal measure. 15,000 square feet of marble, mahogany, and memories. 9 bedrooms, but Marcus only used 1. 4 living rooms, all spotless because no one ever sat in them. A kitchen designed for a family of 10, where Marcus ate microwaved meals alone. Shanice's duties were straightforward. Keep the house clean, prepare meals, and maintain the grounds when needed. The pay was extraordinary. The work was easy. But the rules were specific and strange. Never enter the East Wing after sunset. Never ask about the photographs. Never, under any circumstances, open the door at the end of the 2nd floor hallway. And never ask Marcus about his family. For the first week, Shanice followed every rule perfectly. She needed this job too desperately to jeopardize it. She'd arranged for Zuri to stay with her sister during the week and visit on weekends, telling Marcus she needed Sundays off for church. He'd agreed without question. But Shanice noticed things that troubled her. Marcus barely ate. The meals she prepared with care would sit outside his office door, untouched, until she cleared them away hours later. He never slept more than a few hours. She could hear him walking the halls at 3 in the morning, his footsteps slow and heavy, like a man carrying weight he couldn't put down. He received visitors occasionally, business associates who never stayed long, but no friends, no family. No one seemed to actually know him. And there were the photographs, dozens of them throughout the house, but every single one was turned face down or covered with cloth, as if looking at them would cause physical pain. By the second week, Shanice's professional distance began to crack. She'd spent 17 years as a nursing assistant. She knew what grief looked like, knew the difference between someone who was sad and someone who was slowly disappearing from the inside out. Marcus was disappearing. On November 20th, 3 weeks into her employment, Shanice made her first mistake. She was cleaning the main hallway when she accidentally knocked over a covered photograph. The cloth fell away, revealing the image beneath. Shanice's breath caught. It was a family portrait. Marcus, maybe 15 years younger, his arm around a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. The woman wore a yellow sundress and held a little girl, maybe 5 years old, who had her father's eyes and her mother's joyful expression. They were at a park, sunshine filtering through trees behind them, caught in a moment of pure, uncomplicated happiness. The photo was dated July 4th, 2001, 22 years ago. Shanice stared at it, her heart aching. Where were they now? Why did Marcus live in this huge house completely alone? What had happened to that happiness? She heard movement behind her and spun around. Marcus stood at the end of the hallway, frozen, his eyes locked on the photograph in her hands, and the expression that crossed his face was something Shanice would never forget. Not anger, not frustration. Pure, unfiltered anguish, the kind that comes from wounds that never heal, only deepen with time. He turned and walked away without a word. That night, Shanice couldn't sleep. She lay in her room, thinking about that photograph, thinking about Marcus wandering his empty mansion at 3 in the morning, thinking about the locked room no one was allowed to enter, thinking about her own daughter, sleeping safely at her sister's house. What would break a person the way Marcus was broken? What loss could wealth not fix? December arrived with unseasonable warmth and a tension that seemed to thicken the air inside the mansion. Marcus stopped pretending to work. He'd sit in his study for hours, staring at nothing. The business calls that used to fill his days stopped coming. Or maybe he just stopped answering. Shanice wanted to help but didn't know how. She was the maid, the woman he paid to clean his floors and respect his boundaries. But watching someone suffer alone felt wrong in a way that transcended employment. On December 8th, Shanice brought Zuri to the mansion for the first time. It was a Saturday, and Marcus had mentioned he'd be out all day at a board meeting. Shanice thought it would be safe. Zuri was thrilled. She explored the mansion like it was a palace, her 9-year-old imagination turning every room into an adventure. She was in the library, running her fingers along leather-bound books, when Marcus came home 3 hours early. He stopped in the doorway, staring at this child who had somehow materialized in his house. Zuri turned and saw him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Zuri, with the fearless politeness her mother had taught her, said, "Hello, sir." "I'm Zuri. Are all these books yours? Have you read them all?" Marcus's face did something strange, something that almost looked like a smile, trying to remember how to exist. "Not all of them, but I'd like to." "Do you like to read?" Zuri nodded enthusiastically. "I love it. My teacher says I read at a 7th grade level even though I'm only in 4th grade. My favorite is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Have you read that one?" "I have." A long time ago. Shanice appeared in the doorway, her heart pounding. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't think you'd be back so early. I can take her home right now." But Marcus held up a hand. "It's fine. She's welcome here." He looked at Zuri again. "Would you like to borrow some books? I have many I've never read. They shouldn't sit empty." Zuri's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Can I, Mom?" Shanice nodded, too surprised to speak. They spent the next hour in the library. Marcus is pulling books from shelves, Zuri is asking 1,000 questions, and both of them are relaxing into something that almost looks like friendship. When they finally left that evening, Zuri clutching 4 books to her chest, Marcus stood at the door watching them go. Shanice saw something in his face she hadn't seen before. A kind of hungry loneliness that made her chest tight. That night, after Zuri fell asleep, Shanice's phone rang. It was Marcus. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice rough. "About why I live alone, about the photographs, about everything. Can you come down to my study?" Shanice went. She found Marcus sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk beside him. He gestured for her to sit. Then he began to talk. "My wife's name was Tanya. We met in college, married young, and built everything together. She was the heart of everything good in my life. We had a daughter, Jasmine. She was perfect, smart, funny, kind, everything a parent could hope for." His voice cracked. He took a breath. 22 years ago, December 23rd, 2001, we were driving home from a Christmas party. My company had just landed its first major contract. I'd been drinking, celebrating. Not drunk, but I'd had enough that I shouldn't have driven. Tanya told me to call a cab. I said I was fine. Said I'd driven this route 1,000 times. Jasmine was in the back seat, 7 years old, wearing a red velvet dress. She was singing Jingle Bells. Marcus pressed his hands against his face. There was ice on the bridge. I didn't see it until too late. We spun, hit the barrier. The car flipped. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. They told me Jasmine died on impact. They told me Tanya held on for 2 days, but the injuries were too severe. They told me I was lucky to be alive. The word lucky came out like poison. Lucky. I killed my family because I was too proud to call a cab, because I thought I was invincible. Because I made a choice that took 2 seconds and destroyed 3 lives. And I've been living with that for 22 years. Shanice felt tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, that was an accident, a terrible accident. It was a choice, my choice, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish I'd died instead of them. I built this company, made billions, donated millions to charity. People call me a success story, but I'm not. I'm just a man who killed his family and then spent 2 decades trying to buy forgiveness I'll never deserve." He looked at her with eyes that held more pain than Shanice thought a person could survive. "That room upstairs, it's Jasmine's bedroom, exactly as it was the day she died. I locked it 22 years ago because I couldn't face what I'd taken from her. Couldn't face the life she should have had. And I've been living in this empty house ever since, just waiting for the day I don't have to anymore." Shanice reached across the desk and took his hand. "You've been punishing yourself for 22 years. Don't you think that's enough?" Marcus shook his head. "There's no amount of time that makes up for what I did." "Then what would? What would Tanya and Jasmine want you to do?" He had no answer. If this part is making sense, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's really watching at this point. After that night, something shifted between them. Not romantic, but something deeper. The kind of connection that forms between people who've both stared at rock bottom and understood what it costs to keep breathing. Shanice started bringing Zuri to the mansion more often. Marcus never objected. In fact, he seemed to come alive when she was there. He'd help her with homework, teach her chess, listen to her endless stories about school and friends and the injustices of 4th grade social dynamics. He smiled more, ate more, started sleeping through the night. Zuri adored him. She called him Mr. Marcus and treated him like the grandfather she'd never known. Her own father had left before she was born, and Shanice's father had passed when Zuri was 3. Marcus filled a space neither of them had realized was empty. 2 weeks before Christmas, Marcus did something unexpected. He asked Shanice if she and Zuri would like to move into the mansion permanently, not as employees, as family. "I have 9 empty bedrooms," he said, "and a heart that's been empty even longer. You've both given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Purpose. Hope. A reason to wake up in the morning. I'm not trying to replace Jasmine. No one could ever replace her. But I think maybe there's room in this house and in my life for more than just grief. If you'd be willing." Shanice thought about the basement apartment she'd been sharing with her sister's family, about the struggle to make rent, to buy groceries, to give Zuri the life she deserved, about how exhausted she was from trying to survive on her own. But more than that, she thought about Marcus, about how much lighter he'd seemed these past few weeks, about how Zuri had bloomed under his attention, about how sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up and stays. "Yes," she said, "we'd like that." They moved in 3 days later. Zuri got the bedroom next to Marcus's, a space twice the size of any room she'd ever had. She decorated it with fairy lights and posters, and the growing collection of books Marcus kept giving her. For the first time in her life, she had her own bathroom, her own desk, her own space to just be. Shanice took a suite on the 2nd floor, with a reading nook and a view of the garden. She still cooked and cleaned, but now it felt different, like taking care of a home instead of maintaining a mausoleum. Marcus started coming out of his study, started joining them for meals, started teaching Zuri how to play piano on the grand piano that had sat untouched for 2 decades, started, slowly and carefully, living again. But the locked room remained closed. Until December 21st. Zuri had been exploring the 2nd floor, something she'd been told she could do freely, when she noticed the door at the end of the hallway, the only one that was always locked. She came downstairs and asked Marcus about it. "What's in that room, Mr. Marcus?" He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Shanice held her breath. Marcus set down his fork carefully. "That was my daughter's room. She died a long time ago. I haven't been able to open it since." Zuri processed this with the serious consideration children bring to important matters. "My grandma died 2 years ago. I was really sad. But my mom said it's okay to remember people who died. She said, remembering them keeps them alive in our hearts." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Your mom is very wise. Do you remember your daughter?" "Every single day." Zuri thought about this. Then maybe she's not really gone. Maybe she's still here, just in a different way. That night, after Zuri went to bed, Marcus stood outside Jasmine's room for a long time. Shanice found him there, his hand resting on the doorknob. "I think I'm ready," he said quietly. "Would you come with me?" Shanice nodded. They opened the door together. The room was exactly as Shanice had imagined. Frozen in time. Pink walls covered in hand-painted flowers. A white bed with a dozen stuffed animals. A desk with crayons and construction paper. Photographs covering every surface. Jasmine at every age, from infant to 7. Smiling. Laughing. Living. Marcus walked inside slowly, touching everything like he was relearning how to see. "She loved art," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Tanya and I used to joke that we'd have to turn the whole house into a gallery someday. She drew constantly, made up stories about every picture." He picked up a drawing from the desk. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Mom, Dad, Jasmine was written in crayon beneath each figure. She made this the day before the accident. She wanted to give it to my parents for Christmas. I found it in her backpack at the hospital. He sat down on the small bed, and Shanice sat beside him. I've been so afraid of this room, afraid that coming in here would destroy me. But it doesn't. It hurts, but it doesn't destroy me. Being in here, I can feel her, can feel how much joy she had. And maybe that's worth remembering, even when it hurts. Shanice put her arm around his shoulders. She'd be proud of you, for letting yourself heal, for opening your heart to Zuri, for choosing to live instead of just existing. Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. I think Tanya would like you, would like what you've done for me, for us. They sat there for a long time, in that room full of memories and love, and the life that had been lost. And slowly, carefully, Marcus began the process of letting go of guilt while holding on to love. December 24th arrived with clear, cold sunshine. It was the first Christmas Eve Marcus had truly acknowledged in 22 years. Zuri woke everyone at dawn, too excited to sleep. She'd never had a real Christmas before. Shanice had always done her best, but money had been tight. A few small gifts, maybe a special dinner. Nothing like this. Marcus had transformed the mansion. A 12-foot tree stood in the living room, covered in lights and ornaments. Wreaths hung on every door, garlands wrapped the staircase, and under the tree, dozens of wrapped presents. Did Santa come early? Zuri asked, eyes wide. Marcus smiled. I think Santa knew you'd been especially good this year. They spent the morning baking cookies, a tradition Marcus hadn't participated in since Jasmine was alive. Zuri covered the kitchen in flour and ate more dough than made it into the oven. But no one cared. In the afternoon, Marcus asked if they could visit the cemetery. He wanted to introduce Shanice and Zuri to Tanya and Jasmine in his own way. They drove together, and Marcus placed fresh flowers on 2 headstones side by side. Tanya Washington, beloved wife and mother. Jasmine Washington, forever in our hearts. Zuri read the inscriptions carefully. They have pretty names, she said quietly. Marcus knelt so he was eye level with her. They would have loved you very much. I wish I could have met them. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They stood there for a while in companionable silence. Then Marcus did something he hadn't done in 22 years. He spoke to them out loud. Tanya, Jasmine, I want you to meet my family. This is Shanice and her daughter Zuri. They've been living with me, and they've changed everything. I'm not replacing you. I could never replace you. But I think I'm finally learning how to honor your memory by living instead of just surviving. I hope that's okay. I hope you're proud. I love you both. I'll always love you both. Merry Christmas. On the drive home, Zuri asked, Mr. Marcus, are you still sad about your family? Marcus thought about this. I'll always be sad that they're not here. But I'm learning to be happy about other things at the same time. Does that make sense? Zuri nodded. My mom says we can hold sad and happy together, like 2 hands holding 2 different things. Your mom is right. That evening, they ordered pizza because no one wanted to cook. They watched Christmas movies and drank hot chocolate. And Zuri fell asleep on the couch between Marcus and Shanice, her head on Marcus's shoulder, completely content. Shanice looked at Marcus over Zuri's sleeping form. Thank you, she whispered, for giving us this, for giving her this. Marcus shook his head. Thank you, for giving me a reason to believe in Christmas again, for reminding me that life doesn't end just because grief begins, for being the family I didn't think I deserved. Everyone deserves family. Marcus. Then I'm grateful mine found me. Christmas morning arrived with snow, the first white Christmas Atlanta had seen in 15 years. Zuri woke everyone up at 6, and they stumbled downstairs to find that even more presents had appeared overnight. They spent 2 hours opening gifts. Zuri got books and art supplies, and a new bike, and clothes and toys, and everything a 9-year-old could dream of. Shanice got jewelry and a spa package and a new laptop, and more than she'd ever expected. But the last gift Marcus handed to Shanice wasn't wrapped. It was a folder. She opened it, confused, and found legal documents inside. Adoption papers. Marcus had listed himself as Zuri's legal guardian with Shanice's consent, and had established a trust fund in Zuri's name that would cover all her expenses through college and beyond. He'd also included papers to add both Shanice and Zuri to the deed of the house. I know this is a lot, Marcus said quietly, and if it's too much, if I'm overstepping, just say so. But I wanted you both to know, this isn't temporary. You're not guests, you're family, and family takes care of each other. Shanice was crying too hard to speak. Zuri hugged Marcus tight. Does this mean you're my grandpa now? Marcus's voice broke. If you'd like me to be. I would like that very much. Later, after Zuri had gone outside to try her new bike, Shanice and Marcus sat by the fire. Why did you do all this? Shanice asked. Why us? Marcus stared into the flames. Because you saved my life. Both of you. I was drowning in guilt and grief, and I'd convinced myself that drowning was what I deserved. But you showed me that healing isn't betrayal. That loving new people doesn't mean forgetting the people you lost. That life is meant to be lived, not endured. You gave me my Christmas back. You gave me hope back. You gave me myself back. How could I not give you everything I have in return? Shanice leaned her head on his shoulder. You gave us a home. A real home. That's more than everything. They sat there, watching the snow fall, and listening to Zuri's delighted shouts from the driveway. And Marcus thought about all the Christmases he'd spent alone, all the years he'd punished himself, all the time he'd wasted believing he didn't deserve happiness. He thought about Tanya and Jasmine, and for the first time in 22 years, he could remember them with joy instead of just pain, could feel gratitude for the time they'd had, instead of only grief for the time they'd lost. Could imagine them smiling at this moment, at this new family, at this second chance he'd been given. Merry Christmas, Shanice. Merry Christmas, Marcus. 6 months later, Marcus Washington made an announcement that surprised the tech world. He was stepping down as CEO of TechBridge Solutions to focus on family and philanthropy. He established the Tanya and Jasmine Washington Foundation, dedicated to supporting single mothers and providing college scholarships for children who'd lost parents. Shanice enrolled in nursing school to finally complete her degree. Amara thrived, her grades improving, her confidence growing, surrounded by love and stability. The locked room on the second floor remained open now. Sometimes Marcus would sit in there with Amara, telling her stories about Jasmine. Sometimes Amara would draw pictures at Jasmine's old desk, adding new art to the walls. The room was no longer a tomb. It was a bridge between the past and the present, between grief and healing, between the family Marcus had lost and the family he'd found. People who knew Marcus said he looked different now, lighter, younger, like a man who'd finally set down a burden he'd carried too long. The Christmas that changed everything wasn't about money or miracles. It was about two people who needed each other finding each other at exactly the right time. About a billionaire who learned that wealth means nothing if you have no one to share it with. About a maid who taught a broken man how to live again. About a little girl who reminded them both what family really means. It was about the truth that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages, And that Christmas, the season of hope and redemption, really can change everything if you're brave enough to open your heart and let it. What do you think about Marcus's journey? Would you have been able to forgive yourself after 22 years? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We have more incredible true stories coming your way. Thank you for watching, and Merry Christmas, no matter what time of year you're watching this.